Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Age Better. I'm your host, Barbara Hannah Grufferman. Joining me today is Chip Conley, who is the co-founder of the Modern Elder Academy. He'll tell us a little bit more about that soon. And he's also a New York Times bestselling author. And in fact, he's just come out with a new book, which is why I asked him to come on the show, Learning to Love Midlife, 12 Reasons Why Life Gets Better with Age. And oh gosh, indeed it does. You know, I believe that. Chip, welcome to Age Better.
Thank you, Barbara. It's great to be here. I appreciate people who are part of this sort of common fellowship that we have as activists out there in the world, talking about why aging can actually be a good thing.
Yeah. And when I started in this world, I was in corporate America for most of my adult life and then entered this when I turned 50 and had my, what the heck is going on? I'm turning 50. Now what? Moment. And, there really weren't as many of us talking about positive aging. So really, I'm so happy that you are in this space and you have a very loud voice, which is really wonderful. So we're going to take a
compliment.
Absolutely. Okay. So we're going to take a deep dive into my favorite topic of conversation, aging better, which is what this podcast is all about. And anyone who knows me knows how I feel about it. Very good, very positive. But how do you feel about aging? Chip.
I have to say that I probably didn't give it a lot of attention until my 40s.
You started. I think you started aging.
Right? Well, I started aging when we were born. This is one of my key points is like aging and growth are the same thing. We're aging from the time we're born. So aging, to be aged, past tense doesn't sound very good. It's actually very old. But I think we're aging our whole lives. We sort of call it growing because physically, up until, maybe our early 20s. And then no one would call it aging. No, you're aging in your 20s. No, you don't. Although, frankly, there's a lot of articles recently in the New York Times about Gen Z using Botox. Like, that's a scary thought.
And worrying about aging and worrying about dying. I mean, they're already kind of,
Which is something that, usually hit in your 40s or 50s. So I think for me, when it really kicked in was in my late 40s, when I was having a very rough time. I had an NDE, a near-death experience, where I died from an allergic reaction to an antibiotic. And it happened at a time where I was in my darkest place in my life. So to have an NDE, a near-death experience, going flatline 9 times in 90 minutes, while I was in a very dark place in my life, while I had 5 male friends, age 42 to 52, take their own lives, I think it really helped me to sort of say, like, okay, I probably didn't wake up and say, like, okay, I want to focus on aging, but I did want to focus on how do you shift your choice around midlife to take a different path? And there's not much in the way of schools or tools or rites of passage or rituals to help people with that. And the U-curve of happiness research is pretty conclusive, saying that 45 to 50 is the low point of life satisfaction across cultures. And then after 50, we get happier with each decade. So I started getting fascinated with the research, and then I had my opportunity at age 52, after I'd sold my boutique hotel company, to be the modern elder at Airbnb. And the founders called me the modern elder because I was as curious as I am wise, is what they said to me. And that's when I really saw my age, like, oh, I am twice the age of the average person here. And I ultimately wrote a book about it called Wisdom at Work, The Making of a Modern Elder.
Yeah, it's a wonderful book. And there will be links to that book as well in the show notes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a wonderful experience. I mean, you talk about a lot of these things you just were saying in your great book, your new book, Learning to Love Midlife. And, this intergenerational approach is one of the points that you make in the book. And that's so important. And you were living that. And so you're a perfect example of that when you were at the company, Airbnb, as the first modern elder.
The first modern elder for 7.5 years, 4 years full-time and then 3.5 years part-time. I had to own my age and I didn't want to run away from it. There's a word I use in my new book, Learning to Love Midlife, called age fluid.
Yes.
And when you're age fluid, I mean, we hear about gender fluid these days, but age fluid's a different thing, but sort of similar in the sense that you can't pinpoint a person's chronological age. You don't want to pinpoint your chronological age, nor your generation. You want to be all the ages you've ever been and all the ages you will ever be. And you see your age as sort of like a costume you wear, but it doesn't necessarily define who you are. And I believe that when I was at Airbnb, I was quite age fluid because, I was a founding member of Burning Man, the Burning Man nonprofit. So that was really cool.
That's very cool.
The millennials,
That's very cool, Chip.
Exactly. So like, okay, I'm in my mid 50s by that early to mid 50s, and like, oh yeah, he's got a Burning Man background, or he's best friends with Michael Franti, the musician. And so I think age fluidity is something that we should aspire to, because the word we would have used in the past is ageless. And the real reason I think that age fluid is even better, and I don't think it'll take off because I think ageless is what people are familiar with, but ageless suggests you have less age, which suggests that age is a bad thing. And I know I'm pushing a rock up the hill, and you are too on this one, because we have an anti-aging industrial complex that is mostly an anti-women complex, let's be clear, that is trying to make us feel badly about our aging process. And that it wants to sell us products and services that are going to make us feel young again.
And ageless. So, a word, by the way, that I never personally use.
I know. Good. You and I are so compatible on this, because I just think saying someone is ageless, there is an ageist statement.
Yeah,
it's just
it
an
is.
ageist statement. It is. Most people wouldn't figure that out until you point it out, and they say like, "Oh, you're right," But then they'll say like, "But of course, no one wants to get older. No one wants to feel older. No one wants to look older." And that's why I wrote the book. And the subtitle of the book, "Learning to Love Midlife," is 12 Reasons Why Life Gets Better with Age. Because we know all the things that get worse with age, because the world will tell us that, including Hallmark cards. Hallmark
Every
cards
day.
is part of the conspiracy. They will tell us what gets worse with age. And so I wanted to say like, hey, based on my own personal experience, based plus people from 47 countries who've come to Baja in Mexico to our campus, our MEA, Modern Elder Academy campus, and soon to be in Santa Fe, where I am right now. We have a campus opening here. And based upon social science research, there's so many examples of what gets better with age. And I wanted to point out the 12 that I thought that were the most important.
Really, really important. And everyone, you must read this book. I love this book. Now, you are making the rounds because of the book coming out on the morning talk shows.
I know the Today Show and Good Morning America.
Yay. So wonderful. That is so wonderful. And you're also online. You're on a lot of podcasts, other podcasts other than this one, and including the Rich Roll podcast.
Yeah.
I listened to it. It was a 2-hour conversation, so I got to know a lot about you. Really, he has a wonderful way of going very deep, and I appreciate that. One thing, I learned many things about you, but one thing that I learned that I just love, and I went, oh my gosh, I love this man so much, I can't wait to talk with him, is that you don't like the term late bloomer either. I don't like that term at all. I don't like it. I think it's just like, well, wait a minute. What does that mean? Oh, I wrote my first book at 50. I mean, I should have written it when I was earlier, but I wasn't ready until I was 50. I ran my first marathon at 50. I wasn't ready before then. So that makes me a late bloomer? No, I don't like that term. What about you?
Yeah. I mean, I dislike ageless more, but late bloomer, the reason I'm not a fan of late bloomer is it suggests that there is a time that you're supposed to do everything. And
to me, that goes against the whole idea of age fluidity. To me, it's like they're opposite.
It suggests, when we were growing up, Barbara, we used to play the game of life. Remember that board game? Yep. And when you played the game of life, there was one path through life. There was no deviation. You had your little plastic car, and you got your tokens, and when you got married, or you had kids, or you got your first job, or you bought your first home, you got these tokens. It was really like the all-American success story brainwash, to be honest with you. And
absolutely.
I think late bloomer is sort of part of that. It says like, hey, there is a sequence in which everybody is supposed to do things. And if you don't do it at the time that most people do it, you might be a late bloomer. And so it's sort of a derogatory term in some ways. I sort of like it too, though. What I like about it is it does suggest that you can bloom at any age. And
this is true. Okay, I'll give you that. Yeah. This whole idea of life as you were just describing it, and so many kids now, they are graduating from high school, and they'll take a gap year, maybe even go to work and then go back to school. Right. It's like all of that it's almost like life fluidity. I just love that whole concept.
That's good.
Life fluidity. Like we shouldn't, none of us, no matter what our age, should be expected to do certain things according to the game of life, as you just described it.
Laura Carstensen at Stanford Center on Longevity and the authors in the UK of The 100-Year Life really focus on this, about the tyranny of the 3-stage life. And Mark Friedman also does this. And it basically says hey, from 20, up to 20 to 25, you learn. Between 20 to 25 to 60 to 65, you earn. And then after 60 to 65, you adjourn or burn or you return in terms of giving back. But it's like these, there's like a tyranny of the 3 stage life where you're not supposed to go back to school to get your master's at age 40. And you're not supposed to take a gap year at age 50. You're not supposed to actually be dating at age 60. There's just a basic framework that says, it also says, hey, let's keep the generations apart from each other. Mark Friedman calls it age apartheid. And I just think there's such a need for us to create an intergenerational potluck. And the intergenerational potluck allows us, whatever generation we are, to bring to the table that which we know or do best.
Yeah, no, it's wonderful. Everyone that you just referenced to, so highly regarded. I respect them all so much, and I really pay attention to anything that they are saying or coming out with in terms of research and the like. One thing I want to bring up is that, in the Rich Roll podcast, but also in other places, you have referenced the fact that your cancer has
I know where you're going.
and you're under treatment again, which is remarkable. You're a strong human, Chip. And how has this really informed how you view aging?
Yeah, and so everybody has background. About 5.5 years ago, I learned I had stage 1 prostate cancer. Not too concerning. Prostate cancer tends to move slowly, and it was stage 1. But I found out the day after my book, Wisdom at Work, came out. I was in New York, and it was the day before I was giving a TED Talk. And so I was like, oh, this is sort of weird timing. And then I went to stage 2 about 2 to 3 years later, and that's when I had some surgery. I didn't have the full radical prostatectomy yet. I had something called HIFU, which burned about half of my prostate where the cancer was. And it was a serious surgery and, catheter and all, except it was like, oh, okay, the humbling experience of going through things your body is not operating like it used to. And then I went to stage 3 about a year ago. And that's when we had to start making some very difficult decisions, which included going on what's called ADT, so androgen deprivation therapy, which means basically getting rid of the testosterone in my body. I have 1% of the normal testosterone I would have in my body, and then having a radical prostatectomy, having basically my prostate taken out, and then having 36 sessions of radiation. So what I will say is that 2020 was sort of the highlight year of all of that. I'm still back. I'm now back on the ADT again. So just because they don't know with the radiation, it takes 3 or 4 months for them to really know whether it worked. Long story short is I've wanted to see cancer as my teacher. And that's not easy, especially when people are sort of saying, yeah, kill cancer. It's like a gladiator fight. Battle, exactly. And there's certainly some of that too. But I've tried to look at it instead as saying, what am I supposed to learn from this? And it has helped me to see a few things. Everything from I need to ask for help. I'm not very good at that. I can't always try to be the rugged individualist hero. I have a very active and curious life, and yet I'm so possessed and feel the calling of MIA now and running the world's first midlife wisdom school that I sometimes don't give enough time to other parts of my life. How I treat my body. And there was a time a year or 2 ago, I was like, okay, I'm failing my body or my body's failing me, as if my body's not my best friend. What if my body's my best friend? What if my job is to actually just make a beautiful relationship with my body? And I think you do this very well, Barbara, in such a way
Trying my best.
Yeah, and I don't do it necessarily for short-term vanity, but I do it for long-term, maintenance. And I think of our body as a rental vehicle that we were issued at birth. And part of our job is to take care of this vehicle. And the truth is that the more mileage you have on the vehicle, on our body, the older you are, the more the exterior of the car may not look like it did when you drove it off the lot. But what matters most is what it feels like on the inside as you're driving this body. And so all of these things have been lessons that have led me to looking at my cancer as, bad circumstance. If I had to choose between having it or not having it, I'd choose not to have it, but especially stage 3, because, that means it's spread beyond the prostate. It's actually in my lymphs. And so long story short is what it also does is it makes me so much more focused on the present moment.
Yes.
So much more focused on what my purpose on earth is. And, I want to feel like, wow, if I only have 2 years left or 20 years left or 40 years left, I want to operate as Gandhi once said, which is learn as if you'll be here forever, live as if this is your last day or something like that.
Yeah,
it's a beautiful quote.
It's a beautiful sentiment and so important. And I think that people listening right now, it's important because they themselves might be having this experience that you are or know someone, because we are of this age group where the risk is higher, obviously. So I so appreciate you're sharing all of that with us.
Thank you.
I want you to please tell us about the Modern Elder Academy. I'm very familiar with it. I haven't attended, although I'd love to.
You're going to, Barbara. Yeah.
I would love to. It's actually very much on my to-do list, just so you know.
Okay.
And so I will make that happen. But before we get to that, and I do want everyone to know what it is and why you started it, but I just want to let you know, I just think that this whole concept of aging and the discussion, the discourse about it has really, in my mind, been very focused on women and our needs, as you pointed out earlier, because really a lot of the focus is on women and how are you looking and the whole ageism. And I really feel there was a bit of a gap because I know my own focus is more on women's health. I focus a lot on menopause. I focus a lot on the long-term impact of menopause on women's bodies. So that is my personal focus. However, I really always felt there was this gap. And I feel that you and Rich Roll and some other people that I've become aware of are really filling that gap and talking maybe a little bit more to men and making men feel more comfortable about aging. And we know that one of the issues or challenges, I should say, that men have as they get older is connecting and maintaining those social connections. And I really feel that with what you're writing and probably what you're teaching at the Modern Elder Academy is to help men become more in tune with that part of themselves. Would you agree?
Yes, I would. And let me take 30 seconds to give the origin story of
Please.
MBA, or the Modern Elder Academy. So as I said earlier, I was called the Modern Elder at Airbnb as the in-house founder in-house mentor to the three founders. When I was finished with my full-time work there, I started writing Wisdom at Work down in Baja at a home on the beach. And one day I went for a run on the beach and I had a Baja aha. I had an epiphany, which was, why do we not have midlife wisdom schools? Why don't we have a place for people to reimagine and repurpose themselves? So that's how MEA came about 6 years ago. And we have a campus in Baja. We have a campus in Santa Fe, New Mexico that opens this spring. And we have online programs as well. So I knew initially when I was creating MEA that a lot of women I met in their 50s, because I started it when I was in my 50s, were feeling they're feeling invisible.
Yeah.
But there's a power in the invisibility sometimes. I mean, there's like a sense of like, okay, you know what? I am no longer the new sex object. I am, and a lot of them had more confidence in the workplace. I saw women, and also a lot of women feeling free. I'm through menopause. I am empty nest. I may have gotten divorced, and I actually feel like I have freedom in my life.
Yes.
So I saw women in their 50s, challenges, but also a sense of like the opening up. But what they could use then is like, okay, what's the roadmap? What do I do with this? So there was a little bit of hope, but a lack of programming to support them. And of course,
Right, of guidance.
Yeah, exactly. For men, it's not about invisibility, it's about irrelevance. And what I saw for men in their 50s is a growing sense of, oh my God, I no longer have relevance in the world. And because men have so many things working against them here. Number one is because women have multiple roles and are very good at juggling multiple roles in their 20s, 30s, and 40s. When the kids go away, that role can be painful. Emptiness can be painful, but it's not the end of the world. For men, there's usually two roles. I'm the provider and I'm the family man. And again, I'm talking quite traditionally here, by the way.
Yes, absolutely.
So,
but we're also talking about this age group, and some of that is still present.
That's correct. So if a man has these two roles and all of a sudden from a career perspective, they start plateauing in their 50s, which is true in terms of their salary. And sometimes they feel like, oh my God, they're coming face to face with ageism for the first time. And if you're a straight white man, this is the first time in your life where you've had a demographic form of prejudice against you. And so you're sort of like, if you're a woman, especially if you're a woman of color, you've experienced this before, or a woman of color who happens to be a lesbian, guess what? But if you're a straight white man, you're a bit shocked by the fact that the world doesn't, kowtow to you. The okay boomer meme was meant for you because you were the one who was talking about how the world works to young people and not really sort of try to understand context before you were sort of sharing your wisdom. And so long story short is men struggle, and they also struggle, as you said, because they have not built the social infrastructure, the emotional insurance of friendships have done a better job of maintaining. Yes, in our 20s, 30s, and 40s, we are so busy, and let's even say 50s, so darn busy that it is easy for friendships to lapse and to the practice of friendship to atrophy. And that's why MEA is so important for men. Not only is it maybe the first time they've been able to communicate vulnerably in an environment environment that felt safe. And that's a muscle that they weren't used to. And they were able to start building new friendships. And they were able to start understanding where their value, their gift, their mastery, their wisdom is, that I like to call it same seed, different soil. Over the course of a career, you've built a seed of wisdom, a seed of talents and skills. And the question is, where do you plant that seed? It might be in a fully different garden, as it was for me, a longtime boutique hotelier who ended up going into a tech company, Airbnb. And how do you plant that seed in such a way that it's fertile soil and you value it as well as other people do? So men, I think, need MEA more, but they still only represent about 38% of the people who come to MEA. So
I was curious about, I was going to ask you, is it 50-50 yet? But I bet it'll end up being that at some point.
I think demographics are about, again, not getting to the non-binary piece of it. It's about 63% women, 37% men.
Right.
Average age is about 55. We've had people as young as 25. Like, who's a 25-year-old coming to the Modern Elder Academy? But we've had
because they want to learn from their elders. See, this is a very evolved young person, right?
They want to learn wisdom. So our program basically has 4 pieces to it. It has navigating transitions, because we have more transitions in our life than ever before. This is my 2 grandfathers both had the same employer for 40 years. Not the same as each other. They lived in different places, different employers, but they didn't have more than one employer. They had one. And so today we have 12 or 13 employers over the course of a career. So navigating transitions is the first. Cultivating purpose is the second key pillar of our program. The third is owning wisdom, meaning learning how. It's a beautiful quote by David Viscott. The purpose of life is to find your gift. The work of life is to develop it, and the meaning of life is to give it away. And so helping people to understand their gift and then understanding how to give it away is the third piece. And then the fourth piece, that's the umbrella of the whole program, is how do we reframe our relationship with aging? Because Becca Levy at Yale has shown that when people shift their mindset on aging, they gain, from negative to positive, they gain 7.5 years of additional life. Now, this is more life, Barbara, than if you actually stop
incredible?
smoking.
I hope everyone heard that.
Say it.
Say it again, Chip.
So Becca Levy at Yale, she's been able to show that when people shift their mindset on aging, and not just for a day, but on an ongoing
consistently,
basis,
make it a habit.
Make it a habit, or
not a one-off.
Exactly. That's exactly right. So if you shift your mindset on aging from a negative to a positive, you gain 7.5 years of additional life. Now, if you stop smoking at 50, you gain 4 years. If you start exercising at 50 years. So actually shifting your mindset on aging gets you more longevity, additional longevity, than stopping smoking and starting exercising to get together. And yet that we have all kinds of public service announcements, PSAs, for stopping smoking and starting exercising. We have no PSAs for the pro-aging message. We have no public service announcements saying, hey, here's what gets better with age. And so the combination of my book, MEA, are really meant to be pro-aging message that's sort of a living laboratory for the great work that Becca Levy has done at Yale.
It's really wonderful. And you're right about the PSA. There is no PSA for it. You're the PSA for it. Yes. And there's a lot of focus, as we know, on the idea of longevity, but so much of it is focused on the physical, what are the supplements?
Biohacking.
Thank you. Biohacking. And, I listen to all of that and I read all of that. But what you're talking about is a mindset. And that's really so critical to aging better. One word, and it was the first pillar of the MEA that you mentioned, is change. You said transition. I like to say change. To me, that word defines what midlife and then the rest of life is all about, or really what life is all about. It's about change, especially at this time. I use the word change often. You use in your book and in your TED Talk, everywhere when you're doing interviews, a much more poetic word, which I think is beautiful. And I'd like you to just share this backstory of it. Chrysalis.
Oh, the chrysalis. Yes.
Yes.
Well, let's go back to, first grade, and we learn about, in our little science class, about the magical path of the butterfly, which starts as a caterpillar, in midlife goes into the chrysalis, and then in later life, it becomes a butterfly. So if we think about that era for the butterfly, the caterpillar consumes and produces that. It's eating leaves, and it really bulks up the week or two before it actually spins the chrysalis. It eats twice as much as it normally did. And then, so, in our 20s and 30s and 40s, 40s, we're consuming and producing. That's, and busily doing our thing. The caterpillar moves into the chrysalis for the transformation, and there's a liminality to that. To be liminal is to be in between two things. We're liminal when we're in adolescence. We're between childhood and adulthood. And quite frankly, we're liminal when we're in midlife. We're between early adulthood and later adulthood. And there's an element of midlessence that is similar to adolescence because we're going through all kinds of changes, hormonal, emotional, physical, identity transitions. So the chrysalis is the idea that in midlife, you're going to go through a lot of transformation. It may feel dark and gooey and solitary at times, but it's actually where the magic happens. And on the other side of it, breaking out of the chrysalis is this butterfly that is, pollinating in the world. So it's like the caterpillar produces or consumes, the chrysalis transforms, and the butterfly maybe pollinates its wisdom in the world. And so I like to now think of midlife not as a crisis, because that's the number one word attached to midlife.
Not that C word, but a different C word.
But a different C word, the chrysalis C word. And thank God the two words are almost sound exactly alike, crisis, chrysalis.
Yes.
So I'm trying to popularize the idea of the midlife chrysalis. We're getting definitely some traction here because it's helping to give a different narrative to what midlife's purpose is. If you think midlife's purpose is to be like Kevin Spacey in American Beauty and to get really depressed about getting older and wanting to be an adolescent again, and so you buy a red sports car, you quit your job, buy a red sports car, and then you have an affair with your daughter's best friend in high school, that is not a good look for midlife. and I don't think it is actually a look that defines women. That's the male version of the Hollywood trope. But the truth is most people don't have that experience, men or women. Most people have what they feel like in the midlife, 45 to 50 especially, is somehow they're getting the game of life wrong. And so what we desperately need is new schools and tools and rites of passage and rituals to help people to understand what is going on in their life, not just physically, but psychosocially, meaning psychology, the psychology of aging, the sociology of aging. Because you mentioned it earlier, the reality is almost every research study, from Blue Zones, who are partners of us, ours MEA, to the Harvard
been following
study,
them for years. And the Harvard study, right, you referenced
Harvard
that,
study,
the study, amazing.
all of this shows the same thing, which is those who are living into their 80s and 90s and are healthy and happy have the number one common variable is how invested were they in their social relationships in midlife. And so part of what we help people to see is like social wellness is as important or maybe more important than personal wellness. Yes, your sleep, your exercise, and your nutrition, all important. But your social wellness, illness starts with an I and wellness starts with on how happy and healthy you are later in life.
Yeah, I'm so happy that Dan Buettner is getting all the press that he's been getting the last few years with the documentary and of course his books that are always coming out with different aspects of Blue Zones living. It's really very inspiring, and it's so nice that
faculty.
It's so great. I have to come there when he's there.
He's wonderful. He and I taught last year a workshop together, and now we have between 2 and 4 Blue Zone workshops a year, but he doesn't always teach them. So
no, it's wonderful. But a big point of what he talks about in everything is the socialization, keeping those social connections going. I mean, we know that, and thank you for that, Chip. This was an incredible conversation. I was so looking forward to it.
Thank you,
I really feel like we're same mind.
Well, we're both activists. I call myself now a midlife activist.
Yes.
But we're aging activists, and I think there are more and more of us out there. And I think, and what's fascinating is just how much the press is jumping on the bandwagon. I mean, the fact that the longevity is a topic that's so popular these days.
Yes.
And the fact that the demographics of the U.S. show that a continuing growing percentage of the population is 50 and older. Not only because we're living longer, but also because we're having fewer babies.
Exactly right. Lots and lots of reasons. And this is the reason, everybody, I'm holding it up for those of you watching. Some listen, some watch. His new book, Chip's new book, incredible. It is Learning to Love Midlife. And, this is a bestseller already, as we know. And it's because there is a need for people to get inspired to take control of their aging. And that's how I feel about it. And, I like to say we can't control getting older, but we can control how we do it. And that means making all of these choices. And doesn't it come down to choice, Chip, every single day? I think I read somewhere that we make on average 35 choices a day. Most of them are teeny tiny. Some
Yeah.
of them are really big, but those little choices matter. So make good choices now to age better later. Simple,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, exactly.
Chip, we covered so much. Like, do you have 3 or whatever takeaways you really want the Age Better audience to remember from our conversation today?
Yeah, I mean, I would say number one is the social wellness, the idea that friendship is a practice, and if you feel out of practice, you can get back in practice by reaching out to people who you haven't talked to in a while, or
Yeah.
deepening friendships that you already have, or making new friendships. MEA is a great place for that because we have actually 26 regional chapters around the world as well. So our alumni are very active in terms of being active in their communities. Learn more about MEA at MEAwisdom.
Yes, there'll be a link.
Secondly, I'd say one of my favorite questions to ask in a workshop at MEA is, what is it that you know now or have learned now that you wish you'd learned or done 10 years ago? So you think about that for a minute. Like, okay, what's the thing that you now know or have done, but you wish you'd done it earlier or learned it earlier? But here's the more important question. 10 years from now, what will you regret if you don't learn it or do it now? And when I asked that question at 57, 6 years ago, that led me to learning Spanish because I was living in Mexico most of the time, where our MEA first campus was. Or is, and it also led me to surfing. But at 57,
I read that in the book. That's great.
I had like at 57, learning to surf. At 57, or learning Spanish. It's very easy to have a mindset saying, "Nope, too old to do that." But when you think about it in the future and realize that 10 years from now it'll be harder to do that, I might regret it. Then anticipated regret is a form of wisdom, and that is, I'd say a second thing I want people to take away is, that becoming a beginner again and learning how to actually be curious and open to new experiences are very correlated with living a longer, healthier life. And then finally, I would just say, I think one of the things that gets better as we age, it's the 12th of the 12 reasons, is we learn how to be less compartmentalized. We actually learn how to become whole. We're growing old, but we're also growing whole. And in growing whole, it means we're taking the curiosity and the wisdom and alchemizing them, the extrovert and the introvert inside ourselves. And we're making them somehow the alchemy of the two, gravitas and levity, yin yang, male, female. All of these qualities, as we get older, we actually learn how to turn them into gold, learning how to fuse them together. And that is one of my favorite chapters in the book. It's a little bit more abstract, but when you meet someone who's 80 years old and they're glowing and radiant and present, it's often because that's what they've done. They have alchemized all of themselves. They have integrity because they have integrated all of the parts of themselves into one whole human that you see in front of you. And when you have that experience meeting someone like that, it touches you.
Yeah. And I'm sure that you have people like that coming to MEA.
All the time.
Right?
Yeah.
All the time.
Oh, but they might come like that, but a lot of them actually leave. It's more like they come a little
that's very good.
They come a little fragmented. They come a little bit like Humpty Dumpty falling off the wall and the pieces having to come back together. But in the course of a week together, they feel better. And frankly, most importantly, it's the social connection of their cohort and their regional chapter into the future that actually helps them have the confidence, support that helps them to have courage moving forward.
Just so the audience knows, is there a difference between the new one that's opening up, the new MEA in Santa Fe, to the one in Baja that's been around for 6 years? Like a big, just so they know?
The difference, there's actually...
Other than location?
Yeah, I have a daily blog, and I actually say, should I do Baja or Santa Fe? If you go to the MEA website, you'll see blog and just do a search for Baja Santa Fe, and you'll see my post about it. It goes into more depth on this. What I'll just say briefly is, from a content perspective, they're the same. Obviously, being on a beach in Mexico is one experience. Being on a 20-acre regenerative horse ranch just outside of Santa Fe is a different experience. The Santa Fe experience is because it has 2 workshop centers, retreat centers on the same property. Sometimes we have larger workshops for famous people like Richard Rohr or Michael Franti, Liz Gilbert. I mean, we'll have larger workshops. So there's, and when I say larger, I mean 40 to 60 people, whereas our normal size workshops about 20 to 25 people.
Really wonderful. Thank you for all you're doing to help us all age better, Chip. Really, and I love this conversation so much. I'm going to listen to it over and over and over again.
I will too. Thank you. Thank you,
really,
Barbara.
and I hope you'll come back again.
Yes, I'd love that.
Okay, thank you so much.